Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to our audience, our panel of outstanding academics, and our Monash recruitment staff. Thank you all for joining the Discover the Unexpected Careers in the Health Sector webinar. My name's Nell Kimberley, and I'm your host for this session. I'm also the Associate Dean Learning and Teaching in the Faculty of Business and Economics, where my role's primarily focused on curriculum innovation and staff and student development. So just in terms of this evening's proceedings, I'm going to briefly introduce to you our great academics. Each panellist will then give you some insights into their areas of expertise, and then that will be followed by a Q&A. And then we'll finish up by providing you with some useful links to further information regarding our courses. So members of our Monash recruitment team are also ready and waiting to answer any questions that you might have via our chat function. Well, we've certainly read and heard lots of stories about health and well-being in the current COVID-19 environment. Most of these stories are about health professionals at the front line who each day risk their lives to ensure that our community remains safe and continues to function. However, there are also many other professionals who make significant contributions to the health sector and the community as a whole. So the aim of this evening's webinar is to introduce you to the academics who deliver the education and who support the development of these professionals. And as you'll see, who themselves contribute extensively to cutting edge research in a range of health-related fields. So with that in mind, let me introduce our academics. Our first panellist is Dr. Laura Alfrey. Laura works in the Faculty of Education, where she is course leader for health and physical education. Laura's passionate about her teaching and her research, which focuses on educative and inclusive experiences for young people. So Laura, could you possibly unmute for a moment and say hi to everyone so that we can all see you?
Hi everyone, Laura here. Obviously not a local. Born and bred in Yorkshire, in the north of England. I've been at Monash since the end of 2008, when I came to work here in the Faculty of Education and specifically within the Health and Physical Education course. So as Nell said, I'm course leader for two courses within that specialisation. The first is dual sector, which means when you graduate being able to teach in both primary and secondary schools. And then we also have a degree that focuses specifically on secondary education. So those are the two offerings that I have the pleasure of leading. Nell also mentioned my research expertise, which broadly speaking, what excites me most is making change. And for me, that translates into a role where I support teachers in thinking and creating new ways of teaching health and physical education. And then the next stage then is to support them in putting it into practice and working out what the impact of those changes were. So that's my research. Within the course, I teach things like different ways of understanding health, how society and culture and policy impact health. Students have an opportunity to explore contemporary youth health issues like mental health and well-being. And then obviously planning and teaching for high quality health education. So that's me, I think.
Thanks, Laura. We'll come back to Laura when we do our Q&A. Great. Next we have Dr. Nguyen Ang. Nguyen is from MADA, which stands for Monash Art, Design and Architecture. Nguyen is an award-winning industrial designer who works as a practice-based researcher in the Design Health CoLab, which I no doubt he'll discuss with you in a moment. Nguyen also teaches into the Bachelor of Design. So Nguyen, can you kind of unmute and say hello and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to have all of you guys here with us today, and I can't wait to meet some of you guys when you actually start coming to Monash University. Most important thing, I would love it if you just stop by and say hi when I do see you on campus. Um, my name is Dr. Nyanong, as Nell mentioned. I am originally from Myanmar. I am an industrial designer, design researcher, and artist. I have a PhD in industrial design. And for my PhD, I looked into designing the aircraft cabin to help people in economy class sleep better. So you're welcome, everyone. That eventually became a segue for me to start looking into the research that's at the cross section of mobility and health. It created a lot of interest for me to start looking into what's design relationship with physiology and psychology and everything else, behavior. So today I'm a researcher with Monash Design Health Collab, as Nell mentioned. And what we do is we take design leadership in the development and research into new medical technologies, systems, and services. I also teach in the Bachelor of Design degree program for industrial design. You will most likely be studying with me in subjects such as drawing, design sketching, ergonomics. I am very passionate about design and how design can change health, and almost everything I do from here on out has that health and well-being focus.
Okay, thank you. And we'll hear a little more from Nyen a little later on in proceedings. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce next Associate Professor Nicole Black. Nicole is a health economist who also works in the Faculty of Business and Economics. Nicole's research interests include children's health, the economics of mental health, and socioeconomic inequalities in healthcare. So please say hello, Nicole, and say a few words to our audience.
Hi everyone, yes, I'm Nicole Black. Very pleased to be here tonight. As Nell mentioned, I am a health economist. I have a PhD in health economics, and I've been working at the Centre for Health Economics at the Monash Business School since 2012. I have a research-only role, although I do teach into our PhD program. And yeah, I research in a number of different areas, but most of my research is really focused on understanding sort of the economics of obesity and mental health, and also looking at children's health and their development. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say a word about the Faculty of Business and Economics. Both Nicole and I work there, but she just mentioned Monash Business School, so I don't want you to be confused. So we have campuses elsewhere in the world, and in each of those campuses we have Monash Business School, and collectively we've come under the umbrella of the Faculty of Business and Economics. So I just wanted to make that perfectly clear to everyone. All right, so Nicole and I both work in Monash Business School in Melbourne, which is part of the Faculty of Business and Economics. So after that clarification, lastly, I'd like to introduce Professor Dragan Ilic. Dragan is the Director, Teaching and Learning, and Head of the Medical Education Research and Quality Unit at the School of Public Health and Preventive Medicine. Dragan is an outstanding academic, and he has authored more than 100 publications in evidence-based medicine and health professions education. So Dragan, can you please say a few words, say hello to everybody?
Beautiful. Thanks very much, Nell. Hi, all. I think I'm going to retire after that introduction. That was stellar. Firstly, thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. And like the other panelists said, I'm really excited to be here. I've been at Monash University now, I was just thinking now, probably over 10 years. And I probably shouldn't say this, but when I started, I had a great mullet. So it's, I guess, not indicative in terms of my time here. As now, so I oversee a lot of our education at the School of Public Health and Preventive Medicine, which is based over at the Alfred Hospital, which I'm sure everyone knows about public health, given that we're living through it right now. At an undergraduate level, we've got a couple of degrees that I coordinate. One's the Bachelor of Public Health and the other a Health Sciences degree, which is a bit more general, and we'll talk to that later on. I guess from a research point of view, I've obviously got a strong research interest in medical education and health professionals education. So that is, how do we teach our health professionals? How do we assess them? Better ways of doing that. But I guess also from a public health point of view, I'm involved in something that's called evidence-based medicine, which is a really fancy way of saying, how do we stop the fake news? So we get some people talking about this fake news everywhere. Well, we're all about how do we get evidence and actually translate it into practice. So whether it be from a media point of view, a policy point of view, patients or clinical viewpoint. So I might leave it there, and happy to sort of extend on that later on.
Okay, thank you, Dragan. It was lovely to hear from you. Look, I think we've got a kind of a big picture, but what's fascinating for me is to be able to listen to my colleagues from very different parts of a very large and complex institution. So I'd like now to kind of segue into asking our panellists a few questions, a bit more directed questions about their areas of expertise. So Nyen, I wonder if you could possibly give us a bit of detail about what exactly an industrial designer does. And perhaps give us some examples of some of the great things you've been doing.
Of course. This is, of course, a very complex question. And unfortunately, many people today would still assume that the answer is designers make things look nice. Design is far beyond that and far more complex now. But for the sake of the audience today, I think I'll sum it up like this. Ultimately, I think all questions around what is design and what does a designer do come down to two things. First, the way the product looks is the product itself. Second, design is the interface between people and the technology or service that people are interacting with. So what that means is your first and foremost interaction with any built object is that which is emotional. Your brain in a snap moment decides whether something looks safe or not and whether you like it or not. And if an object doesn't get past those initial snap judgments at the first go, it's nearly impossible to make the person change their mind and forget about having a good interaction with the product. So the way the product looks, what it promises to do through its form and visual cues represents everything else about it. I like to think of design as an interface that allows you to have a relationship with a product, its technology and services. And what a designer does is champion that interface with a vast toolkit of methods and techniques so your relationship and behavior with a product is a desirable outcome. Some of the products I'm working on are really interesting. I think one that I'm especially excited about is we're working with a company called MicroX, who's an Australian company and one of the first in the world to stabilize carbon nanotubes so that you can essentially start using them in X-ray devices. Together, we are developing a stroke imaging device that's super compact so that you can have it plugged into any standard ambulance. So in a stroke emergency, your stroke imaging can happen right on the scene. I think it's going to save a lot of lives, and I think it's definitely something I'm very excited about.
Sounds fascinating. What great inroads in terms of the use of technology. That would be wonderful. Yeah. Moving on to something completely different by way of profession, Nicole. What does a health economist, that would be the word.
It's a hard word, isn't it?
It is. What does a health economist do?
That's a good question. I studied economics in my undergraduate degree in Melbourne, and I had never heard of health economics until a couple of years after I graduated. So it won't surprise me if no one's heard of health economics. Essentially, we look at how we can allocate people's resources, which is essentially their time and their money, to maintain or improve health and well-being. So some health economists focus on how we could spend our scarce public health dollars, for example, on medications or vaccinations and hospital services to get the most improvements to society's health in a way that we think is important. And other health economists, such as myself, we look more at the relationship between people's resources and specific health behaviours, such as smoking, physical activity, gambling, and also conditions such as poor mental health and chronic illness. We typically use statistical models to try and examine questions such as how does access to mental health care treatment depend on how much money you have? Or how does financial hardship impact on how much time we spend exercising or sleeping? So some of the work that I've been doing in the last couple of months has looked at how the increase in job losses and unemployment that we're currently seeing affects the mental health of Australians. And in particular, does it affect men differently to women or older adults more than young adults? So I hope that that gives you a bit more of an idea of what a health economist is.
Certainly does. I guess what you do influences a lot of policy development, so it's very important work with regard to the wider community, so that's fantastic. I'm going to, I noticed Laura there having a quick sip, so it was good, Laura, because you're about to answer a question. Given, you know, you're from the Faculty of Education, is there a myth you can debunk about your particular area of expertise?
Yes, Nell. I love this question because when I was at uni, my lecturer, I was doing my master's, and I remember him saying to be a sociologist is to be a myth buster. And it just sounded so fun. I thought, I'm going to be one of those. So the first myth that came to mind in terms of my area of work and health, obviously, was something called healthism. So healthism is a myth that we debunk in the Faculty of Ed here in the HP course. And what healthism is essentially the tendency to explain someone's health in terms of choices they've made or their morality, the morals and values that they hold. So, for example, you know, someone's health status is a consequence of choosing to be inactive or choosing to eat particular foods or not eat other foods. So there's tons of public health campaigns from all around the world and documents and interventions that always use the slogan, choose health. It's been used so many times, which just implies this really simplistic process. Like, oh, I'll choose to be healthy today. But what healthism tells us is that that's a fallacy, it's a myth. And that health, as we know, is way more complex than that. So yes, there's obviously choices that individuals make that will impact their health. But to equate choice to health status in and of itself is a mistake, and it's a myth. So we know from, as I said, we know from decades of health research that it's a really complex
I guess
concept.
That will be exacerbated by the internet as well.
Oh, of course. You know, research I've done with teachers, asking them where they get their health knowledge from in order to inform their teaching. Internet, YouTube clips, it's popular media and popular pedagogy, not what we would say is evidence-based, you know, linking back to Diane's comment. So especially if we look at kids, so children and young people, especially, and this highlights this point of healthism, they usually have relatively little control over what they eat, when they eat, what opportunities and access they have to physical activity and movement. So if a child is overweight, or they're doing a fitness test in health and phys ed at school, you know, and they're assigned as below par, certain assumptions are made about these children's health status. And and I would argue that's based on myth, and that, to equate a child or anybody's health status based on choice is dangerous, really.
Okay,
because it has impacts on their mental health and well-being, their sense of identity, how they view themselves in relation to health. Healthism is one of the main myths that we debunk.
Well, thank you. Dragan, What about a myth you could possibly debunk in your field of expertise?
Yeah, thanks. I might relate this, I might break it up into the health sciences and public health aspect. And I guess a myth or a question that I always get with the health sciences is, it sounds interesting, but I don't want to be stuck in a lab. And that's the furthest thing from our course. Our health sciences is all about, I guess, pathways into other courses for those that are interested in health, may not necessarily be interested in cutting up rats or frogs or anything like that. I'll put my hand up, I'm past that. But yeah, may want to go into physio or nursing or whatnot. And then I guess that sort of relates to the second part around public health, where people often go, right, well, if I enroll in a Bachelor of Nursing, I'll become a nurse. If I enroll in Bachelor of Physiotherapy, I become a physiotherapist. Public health, geez, that sounds really specific. Don't know what that is, and and I guess we're all living it at the moment in lockdown. If you're joining us in metropolitan Melbourne and Victoria, or parts of Victoria as well, and the greatest myth with public health is really around that there's nothing out there in terms of careers. It leads nowhere. I don't know where it goes to, and I think, if anything, the current sort of COVID crisis that we're living through has demonstrated that public health affects us all on a daily basis. Everything from brushing your teeth to putting on a seatbelt to putting on a helmet, that's all public health. But it's public health. I guess the greatest myth is that it's not specific. It's really broad. So public health involves global health. It involves preventing disasters, preventing disease. It involves promoting health. It involves working with government, and I guess finally, what we're trying to do at the School of Public Health is breaking down that fake news. So getting out evidence and high quality information to all sectors within the community, so people can make an informed choice about their health themselves.
Well, thanks for sharing, both of you, both Laura and Dragan, for sharing us some of your mythbusters and preconceived ideas about your areas of expertise. So just want to move back a little bit to research, Dragan. I thought that was an interesting comment you made about public health, and in particular, what impact does your area of research currently have in this kind of COVID-19 environment have on the health sector?
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, given the current COVID-19 status, we're very heavily involved with the call to arms, I guess, in responding. Particularly our school, we've got strong ties to the Department of Health and Human Services, and we've got staff within our school who are currently advising the Premier as well as the Prime Minister in terms of courses of action. I guess one of the most tangible things, and probably a term that I would say 99.95% of the population had never heard of until about March, is this thing called contact tracing. And that's a classic example of public health. But public health is, that's one, I guess, that incorporates the preventative side of things, as well as what I like to call being a health detective. So trying to identify, okay, we've got this condition, we've got this illness, we've got this disease, whatever it may be. So whether you're a medical doctor, a nurse, a public health practitioner, it's all about trying to find, okay, well, what's causing this? And that in part is what those current staff are doing when they're contact tracing and trying to identify where has the infection originated from, how far has it spread, how can we intervene in terms of breaking it down and putting up barriers. And to be quite honest, we've had a great call from the department in terms of our current students in our medical as well as public health and health sciences courses, assisting with the contact tracing. So that I guess is a ready-made career. Hopefully COVID won't be with us for that long, but there are other areas of contact tracing, not necessarily around COVID, that people can get into.
Thanks, Dragan. I think it shows everyone how all of you, you come from very vastly different areas, fields and disciplines, make a significant contribution to what's going on now. And it's all real time. It's not something you read out of textbooks. This is stuff that's happening in the here and now. And I think that's really important. Okay, before we start talking about careers of the future, you can hear from our speakers that everyone's very passionate about their job. So Laura, I'm going to return to you for a moment and ask you to share with us what's, the favourite part of your job. What do you like doing best?
Oh, well, I've got quite a long list. I genuinely, I love my job, and I wouldn't want another one. I've whittled it down to 2, if you'll forgive me for doubling my quota. So firstly, like I work with the best in the business. And when I say that, I mean both the staff and colleagues, but also students. So the faculty of ed here at Monash, it's the best in the country. And that means we have really great people to work with and think and create new ideas and put those ideas into practice. So for me, the first and the second are linked. So the first is I work with the best in the business, but also that means we can be on the cutting edge of innovation. Thinking new and better ways of teaching health and physical education, which, if you're not familiar with the area, the aim, in brief, is to provide young people who will go on to be adults to develop the knowledge, skills and understandings to be able to navigate the complexity of health and be able to understand information, respond to it and act on it. There is some research to suggest that health education doesn't always look like that and doesn't always translate to those outcomes. So I guess that's why we're here, to think of new and better ways of doing it. So yeah, I get to work with the best, we get to make change, and yeah, I'm never bored.
That's great. Oh, no, I don't think I know a bored academic yet. Okay, Nyan, what about you? What's the favourite part of your job?
No, I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it's the research. Really, it's the research. And in my case, my research is not just reading a bunch of books or looking at a set of data. I get to see the newest technology that 2 years ago you would have considered science fiction. And it's right there sitting in front of me, and we're working together with these people, and we're creating something wholly new and wholly innovative and out there. So my research doesn't just end up in a set of text or a set of data that you have to go look at in a book or in a software. It literally becomes something that you can touch and move and play with, and possibly even one day save someone's life. There's nothing quite like it, and I really don't think this job exists elsewhere. So that's my favorite part.
That's great. Nicole, just quickly, what about you as a health economist?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in health and well-being, and I do love research as well. So I really enjoy, using different statistical methods, applying it to big data sets with lots and lots of people in it, just to try and answer new questions that will hopefully lead to ways that we can target policies that will, improve the health and well-being of people.
Great. Dragan, I'll come back to you because we're going to move off our favourite things and get to what the audience is probably most interested in. If you think about it, 2020 has been challenging, to say the least, for us all, for all our academic colleagues, for our institutions, and certainly for every member of our audience, all our students and parents out there. It must have been a very difficult year to date. So when we think of the world beyond 2020, what kinds of jobs do you think will be in demand in your particular field or your particular discipline? So Dragan, I thought we might start with you, some insights around sort of where the career growth, the professional growth and development might be in the future.
Yeah, it's a great question, Nell, and like you said, we're living in a COVID environment now, so obviously the demand for public health practitioners in particular is going to be strong. the great thing about public health and health sciences is it's so varied. So like I said, it could be anything from health promotion, which is, taps into the creative side. So, it's working with marketing and designing campaigns, whether they be audio, visual, digital, or whatnot, in terms of promoting and preventing illness and promoting health services. Global health's a big opportunity. We've got great ties with the WHO and whatnot, and I think as can be seen now, we live in a small world where all of the skills are really transferable. And I guess the one area, if I was to sort of look at it, is sort of something that we call health literacy or data literacy. We've got so much data available now. So you look at social media, Facebook, you can I haven't got my Apple Watch on now, but you can put your Apple Watch on, go for a run, all this data is downloaded. Health data analytics and trying to really understand, what do we do with that data? How do we analyze it? How can we then convert that into programs that prevent, people from getting diabetes or heart attacks or strokes and whatnot? I think that's genuinely sort of a really big growth opportunity in terms of careers over the next few years.
Okay, so you mentioned health promotion, global health opportunities, and health data analytics as being three promising areas of growth for the future.
Definitely,
okay.
Definitely.
Let's move to Laura.
Thanks, Nell. I'm going to riff off Dragon's comment around health literacy. Now, we might define what that is in a different way, but in the education context, as I said, it's your ability to access, understand, use and take action in relation to health knowledge, both for you, so personal health, but also community health. So in terms of demand, I'm obviously biased, but there's always going to be a demand for high quality health and physical education, both in school and community contexts. And beyond 2020, we're going to get these curveballs all the time. Some curveballs are going to be small, some are going to be big, but we're going to have health challenges like COVID in the future. And health education is really important in terms of giving people a context where they can learn about how to navigate health and to develop their health literacy. So there's different levels of health literacy. Usually it's talked about in terms of three main levels. But we know research from the Department of Health that suggests that 60% of Aussies have trouble understanding health information. And I know this is a really challenging time. So I was hesitant whether to even make this point, but I'm going to anyway. So if we look at the current pandemic as an example, I've seen lots of examples in social media and beyond of people with what you might say are compromised levels of health literacy. That means they're struggling to either access, understand or use particular health information. So for example, we've got anti-maskers, talking about control being taken away from them and using that as a reason to resist a public health recommendation based on evidence. So in terms of demands in the future and now around careers, I would always say that we need high quality health and physical education teachers now and into the future, and there'll always be demand in the health profession generally because of this necessity to develop health literacy over time. And I guess from a governmental and policy point of view, we know from research that high degrees of health literacy at a population level will reduce healthcare costs, morbidity, mortality. Money talks. So yeah, we'll be in demand.
Okay, so health literacy and also in education more broadly, there are going to be huge opportunities in the future. Thanks for sharing. Nien, what about in design?
Yeah, about 5 years ago, and you guys are going to love this, Nicole and Nell, an economist a friend of mine goes, 5 years from now, 25 to 30% of the job market is going to have titles that you've never even heard of. And I was telling her, no, that's not. I mean, how would 25% of the job market change that much? today I hang out with people with titles like Brand Differentiation Director at Boeing, Senior Futurist at Teague, Experimental Leisure Designer at Lululemon. And I myself have a title that goes Senior Design Research Officer, Practice-Based. If you figure out what that means, tell me, because I'm still kind of struggling a little bit with it. I think what I'm most excited about, and I'm really genuine with this, and let me put it this way to the audience here today as well. You guys, for the first time, have an opportunity to become whatever you want to be. Combine what you want to combine, to look into how you want to look into, generate new knowledge the way you want to, and become this new contributor to society that's unlike anyone else before. That's what I'm most excited about. And given that trend, I'm not even going to try to name new job positions at this point because they're getting stranger and stranger. And I certainly think this cross-pollination of expertise are going to continue on. And it's going to get to a point where not only do they cross between your training, but also who you are as a person and what you're passionate about.
That's so wise. You're actually speaking about creativity, problem solving, lateral thinking, give all those things a title, but most importantly, be passionate, solve some of society's major problems, come up with innovative solutions. That sounds great. Nicole, in your field, what would you think might be an area of growth in terms of jobs, career paths?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Nien has said is great advice. And so I guess on top of that, to know a little bit more about what's going on in the health economics field, I think, this current COVID-19 situation is really, a lot about health and economics. And, we're seeing a lot of research coming out now relating to COVID-19, and I think this is going to be obviously an important area of research now, but also in the future, we're likely to have future pandemics, and so it's going to be still very relevant. We're seeing research now on understanding the effects of different policies, social distancing, school closures, stay-at-home orders. These are all things that we haven't dealt with before, so we need to have a good understanding of what the impact of these policies are on case numbers and deaths, but also on the economy as a whole and how much it's costing our health system. There's also a lot of changes going on in how our health system is operating. There's a lot more reliance, for example, on telemedicine. So it's having doctor consultations over the phone or video chat. We've got schools operating through remote learning, people working from home. So health economics and, our tools that can really help to understand how these policies impact on people's health and their behaviours, as well as the implications for financing our healthcare system. Aside from sort of the COVID-19 related research, I think mental health research is a real growth area. So the current situation, has seen a huge increase in mental health problems, and it's put a lot of pressure on our already fragmented mental health care system. And so I think health economists have a lot to contribute here.
They certainly do. There's certainly a lot written about mental health at present and homeschooling, working from home, the impact on health administration. We're going to have to look at the aged care system and the implications of that in terms of finance, in terms of the way in which these institutions are managed. And obviously health economists play a big role in determining perhaps the direction of policy in the future. So, and I've got a question, by the way, from an anonymous person about the pharmaceutical industry. But before I get to that question, and I will come to you, I'd like to ask our team of experts, if you're finishing off BCE and you want to come to university and they're thinking and they're very excited about the fields that you've mentioned, how do they start? What courses would you recommend they do? So I'm going to I know that, Dragan, you're in a very kind of large, complex area, so it's kind of not one straight answer, but perhaps you could give our audience some insight into the range of courses that are available and where they might lead?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Nell. I think I mentioned at the start, we've got two specific undergraduate courses, one in health sciences and one in public health. The health sciences, I would say, is a pathway degree. So if you're interested in health, but don't actually know where you want to end up, I mean, it's a pretty tough decision to make at, the age of 17. What do I want to do? What course do I want to choose, and sort of the career path that it leads to. For example, when I was 17, I thought I was going to become a professional tennis player, but that obviously didn't eventuate. So health sciences, I think, provides that nice pathway option where you can get into nursing, medicine, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, social work, name it. It's a nice pathway. It's sort of an entree. For public health, I would say, for those of you who are really enjoying doing the health, the health and human development unit in years 11 and 12, that's what public health is. So if you really enjoy that unit where we cover health promotion, global health, even new and emerging areas such as digital health, that would be, I guess, the course for you, and where you could sort of go off in terms of a career in public health. They're probably the two that are most relevant to our school, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So health sciences and public health sound great. Nien, what would you recommend if you're finishing VCE and you're not quite sure, but you're very excited about design?
Absolutely. A couple of years ago, I met a student who was doing a double degree in engineering and industrial design. And his explanation was, I'm not even making this up. His explanation was, one day I want to design new organisms, new life forms. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever heard of. Like, there's so much energy and curiosity behind that. At MADA, we have quite a few programs. So like, we have industrial design, we have visual communication, architecture, art, and multimedia, interaction design. All of these center around the word design and creativity. So ultimately, the way you approach, for anyone interested in the field, is that you first learn how to create, and then you apply your tools and methods to it. Let me try to use language that the younger audience we have today might resonate with. So when you guys start a new video game, normally you start with a character, right? Like, and each character has their base personality, advantages, disadvantages, how they move, how they shoot, so on and so forth. But as you play the game, you develop their skill tree. With the scores you gain and the missions you win and the points you earn, you start to dress them up the way you want to, and eventually the character becomes yours, and to a degree, you. I think that's how careers in design also work. Like, I think every designer by default is a bit of an expert because they go into a subject field that takes some time for you to learn and master. So your degree may be also industrial design, but the subject you've chosen already puts you into a sub-expertise.
Yeah, what an array of potential careers emanating from those courses. I think it's really important too that you mentioned at the outset the combination of engineering and industrial design. We haven't talked about double degrees, but this is certainly one of the strengths at Monash University, is the opportunity to gain breadth through what you want to study in terms of this type and other types of degrees. So double degrees are really worthwhile doing. Nicole, now, if you want to become a health economist, what should you do?
So there's not one single pathway to become a health economist. As I said, I had no idea what health economics was until after I finished my undergraduate degree. Now, unfortunately, we don't teach health economics at the undergraduate level at Monash at the moment. But I guess most health economists typically have an undergraduate degree in economics. So if health economics sounds interesting to you, I would consider an economics or a commerce degree and take subjects such as microeconomics and econometrics. And that would, give you a good baseline degree in order to study health economics at a master's level or a PhD level. And at Monash, we do have one of the largest PhD training programs in health economics at the Centre for Health Economics. And, you know, if you're interested for the future, you can look up the entry requirements into our program on our website. You can just Google CHE Monash. And we also teach, you know, if you're thinking of a more traditional sort of public health degree, or maybe a medical degree, we do teach introductory health economics units into the Master of Public Health and the Master of Pharmacy, as well as fourth year Bachelor of Medicine as well. So there are ways that you can learn a little bit more about health economics without having to become a health economist as such.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much, Nicole.
No, I do feel like there's something important that I should add though.
Yep.
Just really quickly. So it is important to understand though that at one point there's a slight difference between what you have knowledge in and what you are qualified to do. And it is important to remember that, because there are qualifications and certain certifications with certain jobs that allow you to operate that activity. Those you have to get through formal channels, but none of that stops you from developing knowledge elsewhere that you can integrate into your work.
Yep, thank you. I think accreditation is an important dimension of many of our courses. So thanks, Nian. That was very helpful. Last but not least, Laura, what would you recommend to students who are interested in your field?
Thanks, Nell. If anyone's interested in or passionate, I think you need to be more than interested. If you're passionate in working with young people, teaching them about health and well-being, personal, social and community health, as well as the movement and physical activity side of things, it is a specialised area of study that you can do masters, but focusing particularly on the undergraduate level. As I mentioned earlier, we've got two offerings. One is the dual sector, primary and secondary. So that would be if you are interested or want the flexibility to work in both primary and secondary contexts, acknowledging that if you work in the primary context, you may be a generalist teacher as well. So teaching numeracy and literacy and everything on top of health and physical education. And then at the secondary level, that's where you would focus specifically on that sector. And there's kind of 12 focus areas within the health and physical education curriculum, and they're divided into two. So 6 focus on personal, social and community health. That's where you would explore the impact of, for example, alcohol and drugs, food and nutrition, the health benefits of physical activity, relationships and sexuality, those kind of topics. And then you've got the movement and physical activity strand, which focuses on movement and physical activity. So yeah, in terms of VCE, you do need maths and English at VCE level. We do have alternate pathways, and if anyone wanted to Google that, that's called the Diploma of Tertiary Studies.
Diploma of Tertiary Studies.
Yeah,
okay.
And that provides them with a year of credit, and they could enter in at second year.
Oh, that's very helpful. I'm sure many in our audience would be interested in working in either primary or secondary education and focusing, particularly in the secondary area, on health. So everyone, if you have questions, you can, by the way, send these questions to the Q&A function, and our panel are more than happy to answer any questions you might have. We also have marketing and recruitment professional staff here who are also able to assist you with your questions. So at this stage, until we get a few coming through the pipeline, I'd just like to thank certainly Nicole, Dragan, Nyan. We have 2 questions. Okay, let's take a look at these. Karen?
Sorry.
Yeah, I can give you the first question.
Yep.
How will the demand for health and medicine change in the future?
Okay, that's a very big question. Okay, Nyan, you're wanting to handle that one?
Yeah, because that's something that we talk about almost every day at Divine Health Collab. there's obviously quite a lot of answers, but there's one major trend that I think is emerging altogether, in that there's no doubt health is coming into the community. I think we are coming to a model where your hospitals are going to be focusing on emergency care and intensive care, but your healthcare and your daily health, metabolism and ongoing care will definitely come into the community. And as Nicole mentioned earlier, possibly even into your home through direct connection with technology and objects and tools. So that's my take on it. I think it's definitely spreading out.
Okay, I believe Natalie, thank you very much. That was very interesting. Natalie, I believe you have a question.
I do indeed. So the question came from a student who's looking at doing a Bachelor of Pharmacy, and they're wanting to do business units to make them more business heavy on their CV, as to a bit of diversity. So is there anything we could do there?
We used to have a way of building commerce into the pharmacy degree. We would probably have to explore that a bit further, Natalie, because that arrangement no longer exists. So perhaps if we could speak to the student directly and take a look at what the potential is there for undertaking some commerce units.
Correct, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Anything pressing from our student audience that you'd like to share or like to ask of us? Karen, was there something about a CV?
That's the one that Natalie just read out, because they wanted to figure out how to build some business units into their CV, but they don't have the ability to do business units.
Okay, no, I think that's something we need to explore with our friends in Parkville. Dragon.
Sorry, this is me being opportunistic. In that case, I would say come over and do a Bachelor of Health Sciences. Half our course is elective, so in all seriousness, we do get a lot of students, for example, taking units from economics and business, and then I guess graduating with both a knowledge in the health sciences as well as the business and marketing, and a lot of them will go over and, for instance, get jobs in the pharmaceutical industry as sales representatives or marketing representatives. A lot of work in terms of you know, working with GPs and communicating products to them and the like.
Okay, Dragon, while we've got you, there's a question coming from a student. What are the prerequisite VCE subjects to be eligible for medicine? And do you need to take an undergraduate course before going into medicine?
It's a great question. I don't know the prerequisites for medicine off the top of my head in terms of the undergraduate. They obviously look at the ATAR, but the process is well, it is not complicated, but there are a few steps, including not only looking at your ATAR, doing a potential interview as well. The other option is doing an undergraduate degree and getting entry into the graduate entry pathway of medicine, which is a slightly shorter degree. Monash offers the Bachelor of Biomedical Science. There's usually probably about an intake of about 600 odd students, of which 10% are guaranteed to get into medicine. So that's probably the best pathway through Monash, at least.
Thanks, Dragon. I know that our marketing and recruitment professionals would like to speak with our audience about potential links and information that we have around the courses that have been identified by our academic panellists. But before we depart, I'd like to thank Nicole, Dragan, Laura and Yen in particular. It's lovely meeting colleagues. Some of you I've never met before. It's lovely meeting you for the first time and reacquainting with some great colleagues as well. Also, thank you to our Monash recruitment staff, our professional staff, for organising and supporting this event. And lastly, to our audience, thank you all for joining us for this lengthy period of time when you should be having dinner, and particularly to our future students. Our deepest and best wishes to you all for the remainder of your studies. Our thoughts are with you. We want to see you successful, but more importantly, we want to see you happy, and we want to see you at Monash in 2021. So all the best for everyone. We hope that you're here with us in the future. Face to face would be nice. So on that note, I'll leave, but Natalie, Karen or Scott or Jennifer, if there's anything you'd like to add, please do so now.
There's just one remaining one for Dragon about public health and epidemiology being part of the course. Could you sneak that one in? Thanks.
Yeah, very happy to. It was remiss of me not to mention it, but epidemiology is really at the heart of public health. I think people have become more and more familiar with that term. And that really is what I was referring to when we were talking about being health detectives. Epidemiology is really providing you with the knowledge, the tools to be able to identify disease trends. So whether it be from a purely sort of anatomical point of view, coupling it with sort of the data sciences, the statistics, the clinical trials. So it's a very much a core part of public health.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, no further questions, and no further comments from our recruitment, marketing and recruitment professionals, thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful night. See you next time. Bye for now.